Hi, everybody. This is Eve Harow, host of Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. I am taping this intro on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, the 7th day of Adar 5780, which incidentally is traditionally the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was born and passed away many years ago. It's been a total whirlwind in the last few days, which is also why this show is coming out late this week. But look at it this way. You'll only have a few days till the next Rejuvenation. You won't have to wait an entire week. Speaking of whirlwinds, by the way, and all joking aside, if anybody's listening from Nashville, Tennessee, I know that I've got listeners there. I certainly hope that you're okay and that any damage or, anybody who got hurt in the tornado that I just heard about a few hours ago is going to be okay. And wow, what a crazy, terrible thing. And once again, the power of nature, there's just nothing we can do. So at least we don't have tornadoes in Israel, which is good. Actually, weather-wise, we don't have the really, really crazy stuff. Just everything else is really crazy. As you know, I made a wedding a week and a half ago. Then one of my granddaughters had a bat mitzvah last week. And the next day, the Wednesday night, I got on a plane and flew to the United States. I went to Washington, D.C. just for the weekend, literally for 80 hours, something like that, to be at the AIPAC Policy Conference, partly, and a whole lot of other things. Our very own Yishai Fleischer made a lovely event Thursday night at CPAC, and I was his last speaker, kind of a last-minute thing, and that was terrific. And met some really great people there, connected with like-minded people who love Israel. So it was a really terrific event. Spent Shabbat at AIPAC, also connecting and reconnecting with people that I've guided, people that listen to this show, people that I've seen over the years. And once again, AIPAC does not have the communities of Judea and Samaria at all for discussion, although they did have a discussion on how to help the Arabs in Gaza and Israeli-Palestinian cooperation. So I'm a little confused. They're not political. They are political. They don't want to take on the heavy-duty discussions and anything that's controversial. It definitely seems like it's an organization that is a little bit confused, is trying to be bipartisan, is getting spat in the face, at least this year, by the Democrats. So I don't know what's going on there, but I will keep pushing and hoping that next year, maybe, there will be a panel. There was last year with my own mayor, Oded Ravivi, but nothing this year. But it's still a great organization, and to go there and to feel the love of Israel among thousands of people who come from all over the country is really still a very powerful thing. And I know that a lot of people have given up on AIPAC, people on my side of the political spectrum, and I understand why, and it is frustrating. But there's a lot of good people who go there. And yes, I was still upset when Howard Court, the opening remarks, still talks about a two-state solution. Is are you in a time warp? What exactly is happening here? But it still gave a platform to Ambassador David Friedman and to others who spoke truth about what's happening here and didn't back down. So, again, still hoping that there will be a panel next year where these issues can finally be discussed. The main reason that I went in is because my very own One Israel Fund and the Endowment for Middle East Truth, Emet, had an event on Saturday night. We got about 50, 60 people there, which, considering that it was put together really at the last minute and not with no time to advertise. We were up against Fauda, the opening of Fauda, the third season, which they were showing at AIPAC, and a whole bunch of other things that were happening on Saturday night. And it was really also a lovely group of people who didn't know each other, who got to meet each other, a wide variety of people who came in. I was really honored to be on the panel with Dr. Harold Rode, the Islamic expert and close friend, and also Sarah Stern, the head of Emet, two tremendous people who are doing just so much from where they are in the Washington, D.C. area. And then came back, went to AIPAC on Sunday morning, did some interviews. Actually going to hear an interview soon with Jake Bennett right after our event. Good friend and very, very active guy out in Arizona. And then I went to AIPAC Sunday morning, and I went to the opening event that they had there, and then went into the village where they have all kinds of great displays and people who are there doing all kinds of unbelievable things, showing the armadillo, for example, which is the new shrapnel-proof blanket that was developed with a lot of input by Mark Provisor, who's the security expert, who also works for One Israel Fund and close friend, and a lot of other people doing some really incredible things. So I snagged a couple of interviews there, and you'll be hearing those at the end of this show as well. Could have spent like really all day there just roaming from booth to booth. So much great stuff going on. But I had to catch a train and then a plane back to Israel because there was no way that I was missing elections here. So landed on Monday afternoon, did something insanely stupid, which is look at the board and see that there where the carousel is for the flight from Newark, and I go over there and wait for 45 minutes for my suitcase, and it's not coming out, and I don't get why, because it was one of the, it definitely got on the plane, and then went back to the board to check and realized that I had flown from Newark on El Al, but the carousel that I was standing at was the United Airlines Newark flight. I've never made that mistake before, and as you can imagine, I'm not going to make that again. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that there might be two flights coming in from Newark at the same time. So toddled on over to the right carousel, saw my suitcase right away. My very patient husband was waiting outside, and got home, took a shower, went out to vote because there was nobody in line after me when I got to the voting booth. So I had a few extra minutes. I went into the voting booth, said the prayer for the welfare of the state of Israel, and as usual, cried with the privilege of being able to cast a ballot in my very own country and in some way affect the future of my people. And yes, you're thinking, okay, Eve, it's like 3 times in 1 year. As my daughter said, my 7-month-old granddaughter, she's 7 months old, about her daughter, my 7-month-old granddaughter, she's 7 months old and she's already lived through like 2 elections. She thinks this is just something seasonal. But no, it doesn't get old. It's still special. It's still rewarding. And it's still so, so, so important. And that's why a lot of the Israelis either didn't go to AIPAC at all this year or left early, or someone that I know who votes right and had to be in the States because she was actually speaking at AIPAC on Tuesday, so she couldn't make it back for elections. But she told me that her husband, who votes left, she sent him out of Israel on some business trips, so at least they canceled each other out. So everybody did their own thing, but it's funny how, you know, you say like, oh, big deal, so you didn't vote, or one vote here, one vote there. But it does make a difference. And these elections, and it looks like, are still going to be hinging on just a few votes either way. Nothing is clear. Seemed really clear last night, because what I did after I was in the voting booth is drove to Jerusalem, where I was on the JNS, the Jewish News Service, which is again, you have to know what it is and read their articles, but they have had a panel, Election Day panel. I was invited by Alex Trayman. I was there with Danny Seaman, old friend Danny Seaman, and Yisrael Katzanet, and the 4 of us did a 3-hour panel last night, talking about the different parties, talking about what's coming up and Bibi's trials and the elections. And of course, we were there when the first exit polls came out, which looked like a bigger victory for the Likud than it is apparently going to be at the end, which always happens. The exit polls never get it right. So votes, one vote here, one vote there. It really can, it's important. It's a little country, and it's still important to be a part of not just the process, but we actually can make a difference. So, did that, got home at about midnight, laundry, this and that, sick son, and went to sleep at about 2:00 and was up at 6 this morning because there was what to do, and I wanted to get to the pool. And I'm back home, and it's a beautiful day in Jerusalem. So it's been a really wild last few days, and this also explains why Rejuvenation came out late this week, because I was traveling all day Sunday, and then Josh had Monday, and Gil had Tuesday, which is good because elections. So here I am today, broadcasting on a Wednesday, but hopefully next week we'll get back to our regular schedule, and it will be on a Sunday. So as I'm traveling all over the place, the lady on the plane back, my El Al flight back to Israel, she and her husband were both wearing masks. Although here in Israel, it's like, even though Israel has been stricter than virtually any other country in terms of like cutting down on people coming in, right? Like so I'll give you an example that directly affects me. one of my sons is graduating medical school, which is such a big deal after 6 years in Pavia, Italy. And we cannot go next week because we can go. No one's going to stop us from going, except that then we'll have to be in quarantine when we come back for 2 weeks. And neither my husband or I can afford to do that. So, or want to do that. So it turns out that, of course, we're not the only parents who aren't going. Really, very few people are going. And in the end, this big deal graduation ceremony, getting your medical degree, is going to be in a small room with the graduates, their professors, and a Skype camera for everybody to Skype in. So I guess the important thing is to get the degree, but still, it's such a big moment in his life, and we're so proud of him. It would have been great to be there, but what can you do? I mean, these things are just really out of our control. So hopefully this will get into control and not, grow exponentially. And, tourists will still be coming to Israel. I so far, none of my tourists have canceled and are excited about coming to Israel and realize that Israel is being, really strict. So we don't have a whole lot of cases here at all. But I do know of other tour guides who people have canceled and aren't coming. And I get it. People are afraid to travel. Right now, everything is fine. And I trust Israel because they're being so strict that if they're still, having people come in and out, then we're good to go. Definitely not taking it, lightly in any way, shape, or form. But it's just really, really crazy how something like this can just cancel so many things and have such an effect on the economy as well, as I'm sure all of you know, whether you invest in the stock market or not. A lot of things, of course, manufactured in China that aren't going to be getting out there. So, we think we're so smart human beings, and we are. And we do a lot of things, but in 1 second, we see really how fragile we are, how ineffective we are, how we try and do things, but then you want to call them acts of God, you want to call them acts of nature, you can call them whatever you want, but something like a tornado, right, or weather or whatever it is, or something like if this is some kind of, plague or I don't know, whatever they're calling it like that, can just change everybody's plans in a minute. And so we have to make our plans. We got to do what we got to do. But we also have to realize that, as they say in the Holy Tongue, Hakol bidei shamayim. In the end, everything is in God's hands. So having said that, I will leave you now to the interviews that I did over the weekend. And thank you for your patience. Thank you, especially this week. A big, big shout out both to Tabitha and to Ben, because this show was like really crazy and cobbled together. And I was like sending them one interview and sending them another interview and sending them pictures. And Tabitha put together this whole collage. And they are really amazing. And you guys never hear from them, but they are really the rock behind all of us here at the station. And they make us look good for very little kudos every single week. So thanks again to Tabitha and to Ben. Really a big shout out. And for all of you out there, just stay well, stay healthy, and thank you for listening. Eve Harow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. Love to hear from you. You can write to me, eve@thelandofisrael.com, and check out my website, eveharow.com. When will I be in the States again? Looks like the end of April. I'm supposed to be there, and you can be in touch with me if you want to do like speaking things or have me come into your community. I would always love to do that, because as long as the skies are open, I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be spreading the word, because what's happening here in Israel, what's happening on this Jewish journey is way too important to keep it to myself. I'm just not that kind of person. It is February 29th, which doesn't come around all that often, every 4 years, 2020. I am in Washington, D.C. We just finished our panel. We did a Judea and Samaria panel, co-sponsored One Israel Fund and Emet. So I was deeply honored to be on the panel with Sarah Stern and with Dr. Harold Rode. But we had a very eclectic mix of people that came to hear us and who were here for the Shabbat here in Washington, D.C. So good friend Jake Bennett showed up, and he has been very, very busy in Arizona. So Jake, what have you been up to in your home state?
Hi, Eve. So we've been providing, first I should say I work now for IAC for Action, Israeli-American Coalition for Action. And that's the government affairs arm of IAC, the Israeli-American Council. The IAC does cultural stuff, bridging the gap between Israel and America across the country, doing amazing work, making that relationship a two-way street, bringing Israeliness and Hebrew and and celebrations of Israeli holidays that a lot of American Jews don't know, like Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom HaZikaron, so Independence Day and Memorial Day for Israel's fallen soldiers, and Israeli Yom HaShoah. And they've got ongoing programs through the year. IAC is amazing, so that was a quick plug for that. But at IAC for Action, we're working on government issues, policy issues. Fighting anti-Semitism is a big one, fighting BDS. So state-level legislation that the anti-BDS legislation gives Israel a kind of an economic iron dome against international boycott. And the anti-Semitism legislation that we're providing legal and educational resourcing on and helping with in a number of states is really focused on the growing problem in America of not just anti-Semitism, but this old anti-Semitism packaged in a new bottle, the anti-Zionism, anti-Israelism, and American Jewish kids are being targeted on campuses and mistreated and discriminated against in a variety of ways. Student councils, student organizations boycotting other student organizations, academic boycotts of that, frankly, there hasn't been enough protection for and enough understanding of by people that this is anti-Semitism. Because the anti-Israel folks, while motivated by anti-Semitism, will mask this as a political speech. It's for politics that we hate the Zionists. We don't hate Jews, we just hate Zionists. We hate Jews who connect to Israel. So, God forbid you're actually a Jew that does your daily prayers, which connect, obviously, to Israel every day, or have your Passover Seder and say, Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Obviously, Judaism and Jewish culture connects to Israel, and this form of anti-Jewish hate and bigotry and discrimination, and in the end, crime as well, has managed to slip through the cracks by disguising itself, because not your average Joe who's the policeman or the academic administrator or the judge in the courts, they're not experts on understanding and unmasking. So the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, breaks it down, includes Sharansky's 3 Ds, demonization, double standards, and delegitimization, and explains to people here's when anti-Israel criticism goes from being acceptable, when it's like criticism of any country, to being anti-Semitic. There's a line that gets crossed. Now, the legislation we're working on to adopt the definition doesn't affect anyone's speech rights. In fact, it protects free speech. So one of the criticisms we get from the ACLU is they say, oh, you're going to chill speech. People are going to be afraid of saying whatever they want to say about Israel. And we say, our bill to adopt this definition, it's for use in crime and discrimination. It does not affect anyone's speech rights. Crime and discrimination are not protected free speech. If you are breaking the law or breaking statute regarding to discriminatory action, that is not protected by free speech rights. But we will, when we see that crime and when we see that actionable discrimination, we can look at your words to know whether there was a discriminatory intent, a bias intent. And that's where this definition helps the lawmakers and law enforcers and judges understand what's going on. So if they look at this definition and they look at, let's say, what the BDS movement is doing when they are spreading conspiracy theories and blood libels about abducting children or medical experiments on Palestinian prisoners or the Jews controlling the world, all of that, people will understand that this is the old anti-Semitism packaged in a new bottle. And
so you just had this passed in Arizona. You live in Phoenix. You live in Scottsdale, Phoenix, and you had this done. You've been working mainly in Arizona, or not just?
We're working in several states. In Arizona, we just got through the House. We passed 52-8, which was wonderful. It was a bipartisan support. Republicans and Democrats came together on this,
which is hugely important these days, especially.
Absolutely, hugely important. So next, it has to go to the Arizona Senate and then to the governor to sign. All in good time, and we're working on supporting several other states as well.
I use Jake, who I've known for a long time now, and as an example of somebody who decided that something had to be done. Loves Israel, served in the army, is now living in the United States, and just said, I have to get involved, and got involved. So for all of you who are listening, who are like complaining, and something needs to be done, and somebody needs to do something, this is the somebody. If someone wants to get in touch with you, and learn from you or maybe do similar things in their own home state, how would they do that?
You can reach me at J Bennett, the initial J, Bennett, at IAC4Action, and 4 is spelled out, FOR action.org.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jake. Continue. Hi, everybody. Eve Harow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. I am recording this on March 1st, 2020. I'm in the AIPAC Village, the enormous room underneath where they have all the speeches upstairs. I was up there for a little bit, and now I'm down here before it all hits. I'm only here for a few hours because I have to head home this afternoon so that I can vote on Monday. I will not vote again. But I'm wandering around, and and the Iron Dome is here. The original Iron Dome is here, but they wouldn't give me an interview, which is very interesting. They said they're not allowed to. Said I could talk about it, and I took a picture of me with it. But I think you guys know what that is. The kippah, the dome that has kept a lot of missiles from hurting a lot of people in Israel. Whether you think it's good or not, that we're not dealing with our enemies because we have this protective dome that helps keep us do our day-to-day and not get to the root of the problem is an interesting discussion, but not one for today. So right now I'm in a tent. I'm in a phenomenal medical tent, and I am going to be interviewing right now. Here we go. Asaf just came up. Are you good, Asaf? Okay, so introduce yourself to my audience.
Okay, so I'm Asaf. I'm in critical care's registered nurse, and I'm also the deputy director of the Sheba Medical Center Disaster Center.
Okay, so Sheba is one of the premier hospitals in Israel, just outside of Tel Aviv, yes?
Exactly. This is not the premier. This is one of the top 10, second year one of the top 10 elected in Newsweek, just yesterday, actually, the second time. Thank you. So this project is the only one in Israel that the medical center takes upon himself to extend the medical arm towards whoever needed in the world, and this is one completely functioning unit of field hospital. We can deploy this 10 tent array wherever needed in the world. The setup of this hospital, each unit of between 56 to 78 square feet can be deployed in 4 to 10 minutes. And we can open our gates to patient in the matter of 3 to 4 hours once touchdown.
So there's a tsunami somewhere, there's an earthquake somewhere. How do people know to call Sheba? Because I know that there are other organizations. There's one called Israel Aid and Flying Aid and other Israeli organizations who have been in the news a lot, that they've gone out to Haiti and different places like that. So how does Sheba fit in? How is Sheba different than these other organizations, what you do here?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so all the organizations are very important and provide a very good assistance, but we, on top of it, we would provide the entire state-of-the-art medical assistance from surgery to intensive care to rehabilitation, the entire thing. So, I mean, Israel and everyone else give medical assistance, but mostly humanitarian. But we do provide everything state-of-the-art, just like you would be admitted to an actual hospital in Sheba.
So it's Sheba physicians that go out to this, or you have physicians not associated with the hospital? They're also like on your second list, because you also can't leave Israel. I'm thinking that was an Israeli. Okay, so there's a tsunami or whatever in Haiti, but what about the Israelis that need their doctors in Sheba? How does that work?
So if the WHO calls for a disaster, I mean, if disaster strikes a country, so the country issues a call out to the entire nation on the planet to to help. And the WHO publishes it, and we would take the call. So we would extend our physicians, nurses, physical therapists, logisticians, and everyone else towards anyone, and this is only Sheba personnel would extend and deploy, yes.
All right. So have you yourself gone out on missions?
Yes, I've recently been to Samoa for the measles outbreak in December 2019, Mozambique February, March 2019 for the typhoon, and a lot of other missions in Nepal for 2015 earthquake. Yeah.
So, very practical question. So who pays for this? If you get called out, I mean, the World Health Organization puts out a call. There's a disaster, an international disaster. I'm sure they call Israel. They love when Israelis come because with such a reputation, really, of not being afraid, like going towards disaster. A lot of other people run away, but I can tell you personally that if I'm ever in really big trouble, I want to hear Hebrew. And if I hear Hebrew, I know I'll be okay. Really, it's like that. And I just, to the core of my being, and I'm sure not the only one. And I can understand the Hebrew. Some of my listeners wouldn't be able to understand it, but just know that you'll be in good hands. But how is it paid for? Does the WHO cover the cost? Is it the Israeli government? Is it the hospital itself? What happens?
Sheba Medical Center will provide the entire thing, from the tent to the consumables to the actual physician, nurses, and all the medical staff. And Sheba covers everything and pays for everything. It's only mostly volunteer, but Sheba covers for the entire thing.
Are there countries that won't take Sheba to come in because, let's say, they don't have diplomatic relations with Israel? Has that ever been a problem? Or when there's a crisis, they'll just they don't care about the diplomacy, they want you to come in?
I have never encountered a country that refused medical aid for her citizens. I've never heard something like that. So,
Well, that's really, really great to hear.
yeah, I want to believe that whenever there's a call out for help, I mean, a country would not issue a call out for help just like that. So it has to be a national, very broad disaster in order for that to happen. And I cannot see how is it that a country will refuse someone's...
It would be stupid, but then again, some people in the world aren't as smart as we'd like them to be. There's so much that Israel offers that sometimes doesn't get accepted. So one of the things that one of the giveaways that you have here are little bottles of Purell, because we're in the middle of this whole coronavirus thing. I can tell my listeners also, one of my sons is studying medicine in Italy. My husband and I cannot go to his graduation in 2 weeks because we would have to be quarantined at home after we got back. And even though I'd probably get a lot of Passover cleaning done, I really don't want to be stuck in the house for 2 weeks. What is there? Has there been any kind of international call on that, or that's not something that's considered an emergency on the level like of a natural disaster that they would need you to come in? Like every country is right now still managing to deal with it on their own?
Yes. For now, each country is dealing the quarantine and coronavirus on her own right now. We're dealing with 7 people tested positive for corona. None of them are ill. They're asymptomatic for now. And we're managing actually the entire thing with these kind of facilities, both structured and tents. Yes.
Oh, so you're putting the people who are sick in these kind of temporary...
I mean, we currently have structures, and this tent is a command center for the entire operation right now in Sheba Medical Center, and we're rebuilding more structures, and if needed, we can deploy these tents, of course.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's super important because you also don't want people coming into the hospital and getting infected by people who are in there who are sick. So it's really crazy.
It's very important to know and understand that it doesn't matter if it's inside the buildings of the Sheba Medical Center or not. Everyone gets the whole the same care exactly and the same standards. Nothing is deduced because it's not inside of the Sheba walls. It's the same thing. Whether it's extended in the field hospital in units of tent units or it's inside a wall, it doesn't matter because the only thing that actually matters is the hands that gives you medicine, and this is exactly.
That's what really matters is the people. That's always like that, isn't it? So just another question, because there's a tremendous amount of equipment that's here. Is all this equipment sourced out of Israel, or this is equipment that you have to bring? Because one of the things that's come up is because China it sends out so many things are manufactured in China, and now there's going to be delays getting it out of there because their people aren't going to work. Have you found that you're not getting some of the equipment that you need, or Israel has enough of a stockpile that it's not a problem?
We currently have no problem with equipment. We have everything we need.
I can tell you, because you can't see him, Asaf does not look worried in the least. This is the guy that you would want next to you if, God forbid, a disaster struck. Okay, Asaf, anything else?
No, just want to thank you for your interest and have a great day.
Okay, you as well. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to come by now, hopefully. And this is super, super impressive. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Hi everyone, Eve Harow, Rejuvenation, still at AIPAC, March 1st, 2020, roaming around. And see Hillary, I came up to this desk, J Screen, do you know your risk? We'll talk about it in a second. And Hillary looks up and she says hi, because she was on the Israel Bonds Women's Division trip that I did a few months ago, which was so wild. So it's such a small world, it's great to see you here.
Thank you, it's so funny to run into you, I love it.
It's really great. So what is this? What's going on here with J-Screen? What is this all about?
J-Screen is a nonprofit. We're a national nonprofit for Jewish genetic testing. So our goal is not only to educate the Jewish community, but also to provide access for genetic carrier testing. So what is that? We're not diagnosing people with anything, but rather letting them know if they're healthy carriers of different genetic diseases, 226 to be exact. And it's just a saliva test, and it helps prevent these diseases in our future children.
Okay, so is it when people, because I know that there are organizations who, when people are going out seriously, they go and they get tested, they're not told what genes they carry. They're just told if together they have a likelihood of having a kid with a certain disease. Is that what you do? Or you do a panel and you tell people that they have, I don't know, a tendency to guion, whatever it is in their family?
Right. So exactly right. So we actually, as a medical organization, provide people with the results. So it's just a saliva test. Anyone can go online to jscreen.org, request a kit, and we mail a saliva test right to them. They provide their sample, there's prepaid postage, and then our genetic counselors about 3 weeks later do a video or phone genetic counseling session to let them know their results. And it tells you if you're a carrier. So again, carriers are healthy, you don't have symptoms. The only way to know if you're a carrier is either to get tested or to have an affected child. That's it. So it's really important. It's not just for Ashkenazim, but first, if you have Sephardi background, Mizrahi, if you're adopted, maybe one of your parents converted. So about half of the diseases are more common in Jews, anyone with one Jewish grandparent, and the other half are just general population diseases. So it doesn't matter your background.
Yeah, the Ashkenazi gene pool is a pretty toxic one, so we know that for sure. But like my Ashkenazi daughter just married a guy who's Sephardi background, so at some point they're going to have to get into that as well. Is there an insurance issue though? Like let's say that somebody finds out that they're a carrier. Could it be at some point, I'm throwing this out, I don't know if this has actually ever happened, that an insurance company could say, well, you know what, we're not going to insure you for having a child with something wrong with it, or I don't know how that works with insurance anyway, because we see that you have a tendency. Is this an issue in a very litigious world that we live in?
Right, so that's a great question. So first of all, the crazy part is insurance doesn't even typically cover this at all, right? Which is so bad.
Oh, great. Right? So we don't need to worry.
They would want to help prevent these diseases. Some insurance plans do, but typically they don't. So although insurance companies, whether they cover it or not, they don't really care about this because there's all these non-disclosure acts, the Genetic Information Non-Disclosure Act, GINA, and it doesn't allow them to dock you from any sort of insurance if you're a carrier for this, right? Because it's not going to affect you, and they have no way of knowing if your partner is also a carrier. So, right, these are recessive diseases, so it takes two to tango. Where they can dock you, and this is just a good PSA for all the listeners out there, is if you're going to do BRCA testing, BRCA, that's
for like breast cancer or female-related diseases.
Yeah, and that's very common in Ashkenazi men and women. If you are going to do that screening, you should definitely take out a life insurance policy before, because that is the one type of insurance that you can be docked from. So everything else, it doesn't really matter, and especially what we're doing. But yeah, that's the life insurance and the BRCA testing is very important.
Do you have people doing the screening because they're thinking maybe they have a Jewish background, and then if they get an Ashkenazi Jewish gene profile, then maybe there's something going on back there, even if they can't officially document it? Does that ever happen? Kind of backwards?
It actually happened with a couple where the husband was converting to Judaism and the wife was Jewish, and they found out that they were Tay-Sachs carriers, and he ended up finding his family history after the Holocaust. His family converted to Christianity, and then he didn't end up having to convert because he really was Jewish, and that was kind of backwards. But really, most people are using this for family planning. We can screen anyone over 18. So 18 to 45 is really our core, who's either going to be starting a family in the future or even expanding their family, because the panels change. So maybe they've had one child, thank God, and they're healthy, but haven't been screened, or only maybe for a few diseases. They should definitely increase or expand their panel or get tested for the first time between pregnancies. So that's important. But because, again, there's usually no family history of these diseases, so you wouldn't know that you're a carrier. So everyone should do this. It's $140 $49. So they really have no reason not to. It's not even a blood test. It gets mailed to their home, and it's really to help prevent these devastating diseases in our kids. And most people are offered this type of testing at their OBGYN's office when they're already pregnant, right? So that seems so backwards, because then you don't have options to be able to have a healthy baby. So this way, if you know beforehand, there's options such as IVF with PGD, which is interesting. That was actually one of our stops on our Israel Bonds tour at Shaarei Tzedek, and we met with the IVF doctor, and this is a lot of what they do, but you first have to know that you're a carrier to even go that route.
Wow. So this is hugely, hugely important. How do people get in touch with you if they're listening to this podcast and they say, wow, this is something that I want to do?
They just go online to jscreen.org, JSCREEN.org. Everything's on there, the disease list, if you want to compare what you've already been tested to with what we test for, if you want to speak with our genetic counselor. It's really a homegrown, Jewish community organization, so we're here for them, and we just want to continue helping couples have healthy babies.
All right. That sounds like a terrific plan. Hillary, it was so great to see you. How random was that?
Thank you.
Okay. Good luck with everything. All right. Bye-bye.
While we're facing a threat of an endemic disease, we conducted a whole election. Nothing can stop our Jewish democratic state. We want to have a say in the future of the Jewish people that is being written as we speak. We are in the glory days of the Jewish people, and even more glorious days are yet to come because of the strength that the Jewish people showed in this election.
Listen to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman, political correspondent for the Jerusalem Post, every week